winter silence was comforting. I used to believe the world looked softer under fresh snow, the kind of cold that hushes everything except the crackle of the fireplace and the whisper of wind rolling across the fields. But last December proved me wrong. My wife, Emily, had taken our twins to visit her sister in Minnesota, a trip they'd planned months in advance. I was supposed to go too, but a brutal case of bronchitis knocked me flat. I insisted they go without me. I didn't want their winter break ruined by my coughing fits, so I stayed alone in our century-old farmhouse, drafty, stubborn, and full of noises I usually ignored. When the interstate shut down because of a massive storm front, the isolation hit harder than I expected. Our nearest neighbor was almost a mile away. Cell service flickered like a dying light bulb. Most days I drifted between feverish naps upstairs and sitting wrapped in a blanket downstairs, clutching my inhaler like a lifeline. The first warning. Around the third night, the sleet hit the windows so hard it sounded like someone throwing gravel at the glass. My fever blurred everything, but when I pulled the curtains back, I noticed something that cut straight through the haze. Boot prints, fresh ones, deep ones, lining the tree line behind the barn. I told myself it was a hunter, someone tracking a deer through the storm. But the longer I stared, the less my excuses made sense. The tracks didn't wander. They circled. They watched. And for the first time that winter, I felt a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Something that crawled under my skin and stayed there. The storm tightens. By the next afternoon, my fever was so high that walking from the couch to the kitchen felt like crossing a desert. Still, strange details kept pulling me out of my misery. The wooden gate behind the garden, always latched, hung open. Not swaying, just open. Our old barn had a motion sensor light the previous owner installed. It kept flickering on and off every few minutes, even though there were no animals inside. When I stepped onto the porch and squinted through the blowing snow, the light snapped on again. Stayed bright for 10 seconds, then darkness. It did that 3 times. I told myself the storm was messing with the sensors, but deep down, I didn't believe it. Midnight visitors. Later that night, I called Emily just to hear her voice. I didn't mention anything strange. No point making her worry from 2 states away. When we hung up, I sat by the front window and watched the barn light stutter, again and again. Around midnight, through the curtain of falling snow, I saw something that punched straight through my fever. A person, standing at the corner of the barn. Not moving, not shouting, just watching the house. I blinked hard, thinking the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But when I looked again, a second figure stood beside him, taller, wearing a hood pulled low. Both of them turned their heads toward the house. At the exact same moment, I ducked so fast, I nearly lost my balance. For the first time, I wondered if I really was alone out here. And for the first time, real fear settled in my chest, closing in. By morning, the fever had taken a brutal turn. I woke coughing so hard, it felt like something inside me might tear. The house smelled like old wood and stale air. Normally, I'd crack a window, but the storm outside was worse than ever, and I wasn't imagining things anymore. The men were still there, 3 of them now, half hidden among the trees, spread out like they were taking positions, moving slowly, deliberately, studying the house, studying me. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff. They promised to send someone, but the roads were coated in ice. Could be an hour, maybe more, the dispatcher said. I swallowed hard. All you can do is stay inside and keep your doors locked. So I did. Twice. But in a house this old, locks are more symbolic than secure. Every gust of wind rattled the mudroom door like someone was testing it. Dusk came fast. My coughing fits got worse. I felt slow, disoriented, helpless. When night finally settled, I heard them. Not the storm, not the wind. Voices. Close. Calm. I pressed my ear to the floor vent on the stairs. He's sick, barely moving. Easy target. Lights haven't changed all week. Each sentence felt like an icicle dragging down my spine. They had been watching me. Every cough, every flicker of the fireplace, every time I shuffled past a window, and they thought I was too weak to fight back. The break-in. They waited till the world was pitch black. The first hit against the mudroom door wasn't loud, just deliberate. A pry bar working beneath the lock plate. The second strike split the wood. I didn't. Stumbling up the stairs, I yanked open the narrow door leading to the crawl space beneath them. An old, cramped relic of farmhouse design. Cold air, dust, pipes. I dropped to my hands and knees and crawled inside, just as the mudroom door gave way behind me. The sound echoed through the house, sharp, final. I pressed myself between the joists, forcing down a cough. Above me, the floorboards groaned under heavy footsteps. There were at least 3 men, maybe 4. Their boots thudded across the kitchen, then into the hallway. Guy's got to be upstairs, one muttered. He can barely walk. Another voice answered, calm and cold. Hope he's out cold, makes it cleaner. I clenched my inhaler so hard, my hand ached. My lungs burned for a breath I didn't dare take. They opened doors, checked closets. Their movements were steady, practiced, too practiced. These men had done this before. One stopped near the vent above my head. He was coughing earlier, he said. Yeah, another replied. Sounded bad. A plan formed in my fever-soaked brain. Desperate, stupid, but maybe the only chance I had. I forced a deep inhale through my nose and unleashed the loudest, wettest, most guttural coughing fit of my life. It ripped through my throat like barbed wire. The reaction above me was instant. What the hell was that? Jesus, he's contagious. He sounds half dead. You want to catch whatever he's got? Their boots shuffled backward from the vent. One hissed, forget it. We need another house. This place ain't worth it. And then, like a miracle, I heard the front door yank open. Cold air blasted into the hallway as they fled into the storm. Everything went silent. And the rescue. I woke to voices. Real ones. Firm, professional, familiar. Marcus, can you hear me? A flashlight cut into the crawl space. A deputy crouched beside the opening, his breath fogging in the cold air. Behind him, red and blue lights painted the walls in flashes. They pulled me out gently and eased me onto the couch, while a paramedic checked my pulse and lungs. You're lucky you called when you did, the deputy said. Storm cleared enough for us to get here. My voice was barely more than air. They were here. We know, he said. We found fresh tracks all around the house. Same prints tied to a group hitting rural homes off the interstate this week. They thought everyone was gone for the holidays. I closed my eyes as another coughing fit tore through me. "You scared them off," he added. "Whatever you did, it worked." I almost laughed, but it dissolved into more coughing. Guess being sick finally helped me. What really happened over the next few days, while my fever eased and Emily rushed home early, the investigators filled me in. The men had been scouting rural homes that looked empty. No footprints, no movement. Cars gone for the holidays. They assumed our house was deserted because they never saw me leave, and because my lights stayed the same every night. They only realized someone was home when they saw me coughing through the window on the second night. They thought I'd be weak, helpless, and they weren't wrong about the weakness, but they were wrong about the helpless part. Sometimes survival doesn't look heroic. Sometimes it looks like lying on the floor of a crawl space, lungs on fire, using the only thing you have left. For me, that was bronchitis. And dumb luck. Strength doesn't always come from muscle or preparation. Sometimes it comes from instinct, from awareness, from refusing to give up, even when you feel at your low. Sometimes survival hangs on nothing more than paying attention and acting when it matters most. A new story begins. I never planned on working overnight shifts at a gas station. I was 23, juggling community college, scraping together money for Christmas, gifts that didn't come from the clearance bin. That's how I ended up taking a temporary holiday job at the little 24-hour station off Route 18, the kind of spot truckers used for coffee and locals used for propane refills. The station sat alone on a long stretch of highway surrounded by frozen cornfields. At night, the nearest porch light was miles away. On my first day, the owner, Mr. Calhoun, told me, "Nights are slow, son. Easy money. Keep the place clean. Don't fall asleep. And if anything weird happens, hit the alarm." I laughed. Weird things didn't happen in my town. Not real ones. By December 20th, winter came down hard. Temperatures dropped into single digits. The wind felt like it could I sat behind the counter, wrapped in a thick hoodie, watching the grainy security monitors while sipping instant coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. Around 2 a.m., the quiet felt heavier than usual, like the whole world was holding its breath. Frost crawled across the windows. The station felt like a tiny frozen island in the middle of nowhere. Then the door chimed. 2 men walked in. Heavy coats, scarves pulled up to their eyes. No coffee, no snacks, no conversation. They drifted down the aisles, turning their heads just enough to stare at me through the mirrors. That's when the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling wrong. I told myself they were travelers, maybe cold, maybe tired, anything to avoid the sinking feeling building in my gut. Their boots scraped across the tile. One pretended to study a rack of maps, but he wasn't reading a thing. His eyes stayed locked on me through the convex mirror. The other whispered into his scarf, breath fogging around the fabric. I kept my voice steady. "Evening, guys. Let me know if you need anything." They didn't answer. The air felt tight. My hand hovered near the underside of the counter, right above the silent alarm, hidden beneath a flap of tape. Mr. Calhoun always said, "If your gut screams, don't wait." Mine wasn't screaming yet, but it was whispering, loudly. At 2:07 a.m., everything clicked into place. A third man tapped on the glass door from outside, not knocking, tapping like a signal. He jerked his head toward the parking lot. Inside, the 2 men subtly shifted their positions. One stepped closer to the register. The other moved between me and the hallway leading to the office. My breath caught. They weren't customers. They were lining up a robbery. I backed slowly toward the office, trying to look casual. But the man closest to me crouched down, pretending to tie his bootlace. "Careful back there," he said without looking up. "Wouldn't want you slipping." His tone crawled under my skin. Behind me, the second man whispered, "Night clerks alone. Sheriff won't get out here fast. Roads are iced over." I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did. And the moment I did, my quiet little overnight shift felt like a trap I'd walked into myself. My hands shook, but my mind snapped into survival mode. I tried to remember the emergency protocol taped under the counter, the one Mr. Calhoun made me memorize. A line jumped out of my memory in bright neon. If threatened, create the illusion of backup. I glanced at the intercom button on the register, the one connected to the empty storage room in the back. But beneath the counter was a laminated card explaining how to activate a pre-recorded safety drill voice. A recording used for training, never once used in a real emergency. Until now. I grabbed the intercom button and spoke loudly, forcing my voice steady. "Hey, Sam, I'm closing out early. You almost done with inventory back there?" The two men froze. Their eyes snapped toward the hallway. I pressed the smaller button under the counter, the one that triggered the automated reply. A calm male voice echoed through the speaker. "Inventory check complete. Coming up front now." The effect was immediate. The man near the register stepped back. "There's another guy here." The one crouched near me muttered, "Was supposed to be one." He said it was one. Through the window, the third man banged on the glass, waving frantically for them to hurry. For a few long seconds, we all stood there, me gripping the intercom, them recalculating. I prayed they wouldn't figure out the voice was fake. Then panic snapped inside them. "Let's go," one barked. "Bad setup. Move." They rushed out the door, slipping on the icy pavement as they scrambled to the truck idling under the streetlight. Within seconds, they were gone, swallowed by the dark highway. I leaned against the counter, heart slamming so hard it shook my ribs, and finally hit the real silent alarm. The station went quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. The longest 15 minutes of my life. Time crawled. Every sound made me flinch. The cold seeped through the glass. The wind rattled the thin metal walls. I kept hearing their voices in my head. Night clerk works alone. Sheriff won't get here quick. Like they'd been scouting stations all week. I double-checked the doors 3 times, even though they were already locked. I shut off the aisle lights so I wouldn't be visible from outside. My hand shook so badly, I dropped my coffee mug, shattering it across the floor. I kept expecting that truck to come back. At 2:26 a.m., headlights swept across the lot. For a moment, terror returned, until I saw the sheriff's decal. 2 deputies stepped inside, snow dusting their hats. "You Javier?" the older one asked. "Yeah," I said, voice cracking. "Dispatch said you had 3 suspicious subjects?" I nodded and told them everything. Every whisper, every signal, every look. They exchanged grim glances. "We've been tracking a group hitting rural stations along the interstate," the older deputy said. "They come in bundled up, wait until the clerk's isolated, then move fast." "You scared them off," the younger added. "Smart thinking with that intercom." I shrugged weakly. Just remembered the protocol. I didn't tell them I had been seconds away from passing out. They swept the lot, checked the cameras, and stayed with me until the roads cleared enough for a patrol car to linger outside. Just having them nearby made the night feel survivable again. But when the door shut behind them and their lights faded down the highway, the silence felt different. Heavier, sharper, like danger had brushed past me and left a shadow behind. I knew I'd never forget that feeling. Aftermath. For the rest of December, I only worked daylight shifts. Mr. Calhoun insisted. "Kid, you got guts," he told me. "But I'm not putting you on another overnight until we upgrade security." The station installed brighter lights, new cameras, stronger locks. Still, every time the door chimed, my stomach tightened. Truckers grabbing energy drinks, couples buying snacks, teenagers on winter break. They all looked different now. Sometimes at night, lying in bed, I'd hear the men's voices echo again in my head. "Night clerk works alone. Bad setup. Let's go." Their tone had been almost bored, like this wasn't the first station they'd hit, and it wouldn't be the last. I kept wondering what would have happened if I hadn't remembered that protocol card, if the recording hadn't sounded real enough, if any one of them had pushed just a little harder. Too many ifs. A quiet gratitude. On Christmas Eve, while wrapping gifts for my little brothers, I felt unexpectedly grateful. Grateful for a job I didn't even want, for a boss who valued safety, for a cheap intercom system that saved me from becoming a headline. Mostly, I was grateful that fear didn't freeze me. Fear made me act. I didn't stay at the station long. By January, I found a better job at a warehouse. But every year, when December rolls in and the nights grow cold and quiet, I remember that shift and how thin the line is between ordinary and dangerous. Courage isn't always sharp or heroic. Sometimes it's a single split-second choice made in the middle of a frozen night when fear is telling you to shut down. Survival can come down to instinct, to preparation you barely remember practicing, to acting before your mind catches up. And that lesson stayed with me long after that December. I've always loved this month. The lights, the cold, the way the world seems to slow down just enough for people to breathe. My company's winter gala was the one event I actually looked forward to. They hosted it in an old, restored theater downtown. Deep red velvet curtains, gold trim curling along the walls, chandeliers sparkling like frozen fireworks. It felt magical. Too magical, maybe, because I stayed far later than I planned. I chatted with coworkers I only saw during quarterly meetings. Champagne, laughing, telling stories over soft jazz drifting down from the balcony. By the time I finally checked my phone, it was almost noon. I kept telling myself, okay, just 5 more minutes. 5 minutes became 20. When I finally stepped outside, freezing rain had begun falling in thin, sharp needles. The marquee lights reflected across the soaked pavement in long streaks of gold and red. Rideshares were delayed because of the weather, and I didn't feel like waiting shoulder to shoulder with the crowd near the entrance. I'd walked to the bus stop before, just 2 blocks away, usually a quick, simple shortcut behind the theater. I didn't think twice this time either, and I had no idea a dark van was parked across the street. Windows tinted, 2 men inside watching the crowd, waiting for someone alone. The service passage behind the theater felt harmless in daylight. Just a narrow brick corridor, with old posters peeling off delivery doors. But tonight, in December, it felt tighter, colder, wrong. Only one flickering bulb burned in the center. Freezing rain tapped against metal dumpsters like static. Still, I kept walking. I just wanted to get home, peel off my heels, and fall asleep under a warm blanket. Halfway through, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, steady, too close. At first, I told myself it had to be another guest leaving the gala. A server going home. Anything normal. I didn't look back until the footsteps quickened. A hand clamped around my arms and yanked me backward. "Don't scream," a man hissed in my ear. Another stepped in front of me, hood low over his face. Phone, bag, jewelry, now. My stomach plummeted. My heartbeat pounded so violently it felt like it rattled inside my teeth. They worked fast, too fast, like this wasn't their first time. One ripped my purse off my shoulder. The other dug through my coat pockets. Then one of them said a sentence that turned my blood to ice. The last one fought less. The last one. They had already tapped someone tonight. When the man in front reached for the pendant necklace my mom gave me, something I never removed, something inside me snapped. A raw, desperate instinct. My body moved before my mind did. I drove the heel of my shoe straight into his shin. He stumbled with a grunt. The man behind me loosened his grip for a single second. 1 second was enough. I twisted free, scraping my palms against the rough brick wall. Cold air sliced into my lungs as I inhaled to scream. "Help!" My voice cracked, echoing down the narrow passage. The men jerked like startled animals. "What are you doing?" One snapped at the other. "Get her!" But then something unexpected happened. Apartment lights flicked on in a building across the alley. Windows opened. A voice shouted, "Hey, what's going on down there?" Panic hit them instantly. "Forget it! Go!" They bolted toward the street, slipping on the icy pavement. A van door slammed. Tires screeched. And then, silence. My hands throbbed from hitting the brick. The rain stung my skin. Shock burned through every nerve. I stumbled toward the street, soaked and shaking so badly I could barely stand. The first set of headlights I saw, I waved them down. A taxi stopped. The driver's eyes widened when he saw me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "No," I whispered. "Please, just drive." The next few days were a blur. Police reports, photo lineups, retelling the same story to officers with tired, serious faces. They told me there had been 2 other attacks that night. One person fought back, one didn't. And I kept replaying the attacker's words. The last one fought less. Who was that person? Were they okay? Were they just walking home like I was? My friends tried to comfort me. "You survived. That's what matters." My mom held me like I was a child again. Coworkers brought blankets and warm food. But the nights were the hardest, because in the dark, my mind played every moment again. The footsteps, the grip on my arms, that awful sentence, and the rain, always the rain, hitting the pavement like static. Sleep came in short, ragged pieces after the attack. I avoided dark hallways, avoided shortcuts, avoided anything that even looked like a narrow passage. Even the sound of freezing rain made my shoulders tighten. One afternoon, Detective Malone called. "We found the van," he said. "We're working on identifying the men. You did the right thing. You probably saved yourself." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel heroic. I just felt lucky. And luck is a fragile thing to depend on. But slowly, inch by inch, I pushed myself back into routine. Work, coffee runs, dinner with friends. Normal life in small pieces. Still, every time I passed the theater, its marquee glowing, people laughing as they poured out into the night, I felt that night echo inside me. A quiet reminder: danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in familiar places. A week later, I walked downtown during evening rush. Holiday lights hung. Carolers sang near storefronts. People hurried past with rosy cheeks and arms full of shopping bags. It was beautiful, peaceful in a way I didn't know how to appreciate the year before. I paused near the theater's marquee. Cars idled in a line. The glow of the lights shimmered across the wet pavement. And for the first time, the weight of that night didn't crush me. It settled into something I could finally hold without shaking. I realized I had spent so long believing danger looked dramatic, loud, obvious, impossible to miss. But the truth is colder than that. Danger can be quiet, hidden. It can step out from behind a familiar corner when you least expect it. My therapist once said, being cautious isn't living in fear. It means valuing yourself enough to protect your safety. I think she was right. Now I walk with more awareness. I ask for rides. I stick to well-lit streets. And I never assume a shortcut is harmless just because I've taken it before. I still wear the necklace my mother gave me. The chain is slightly bent from where one of the men pulled it. I keep it that way. It reminds me that I fought back, not because I was fearless, but because I desperately wanted to go home. And wanting to go home is one of the strongest instincts we have. That evening, heading toward my bus, I didn't take the service passage. I took the long route, under bright lights, surrounded by people, aware of every step. And this time, I wasn't ashamed of my caution. I was grateful for it. Trust your instincts, even when they feel inconvenient. Safety isn't paranoia, it's awareness. A familiar path can turn dangerous without warning. But quick thinking, courage, and preparation can turn fear into survival. Protect yourself, stay alert, and never assume danger only happens to someone else.